Well, here we are, week 3 of the college football season, and everybody wants to know, will the dogs be barking in week 3? Well, we've got 6 games, including 3 best bets. We're going to break down for you and see, in fact, if there are a dog or two that might be barking this weekend. And we'll do it, of course, with 3 of the best at wagertalk.com. As the Penn in the house, Ralph Michaels, Drew Martin Betts is here, as is Mr. Vino, finally out from under lockdown there. It's always a pleasure to see you, Rob. Good stuff. Glad they caught the guy after a month. Let us kick off here with Ralph, though, here, because I'm intrigued with this game. It feels like an awfully large number here, Ralph, as we head to the SEC to start it off. South Carolina taking on Georgia. I don't know, 4 touchdowns, 3 touchdowns. You give South Carolina a shot at all in this one.
Joe, I had to go to the database while you were talking. Dogs this year in college football, just FYI, 91 and 84 ATS, so 52%. Woo. There's been 22 upsets so far in college football. And just FYI, the over-under right now, 50.8%. So all the talk about plays, fewer series, watch Bet on it, because I broke down what this season is compared to the last few weeks. But in this game, what do you make of Georgia? We don't know. We're used to them beating up non-conference foes, and they beat UT Martin 28-7 and Ball State 45-3. But again, they've played 2 nobodies. There's 133 FBS teams. Georgia's played the number 131 schedule. So now you're facing a true opponent. South Carolina not in the same boat. They, of course, had the neutral game to start the season against North Carolina. They were in that early. They ended up getting blitzed late and allowing 437 yards. So if you look at both teams, the one stat that absolutely sticks out is that South Carolina was sacked 9 times against North Carolina in the opener. The North Carolina defense looked like the Georgia defense of last year. But we saw the next week they really didn't have that same success. So despite having Spencer Rattler as quarterback, an experienced quarterback, and I would say the better of the 2 quarterbacks today, he's completed 83%, but has been sacked 10 times. So when I break down this game, it's this. Do I trust Georgia's offense? I don't. Carson Beck has thrown for 577 yards, 72% completions, but they've rushed for 129 yards per game and 4.5 yards per carry. So he's had play action ability. I don't think he has this much. South Carolina didn't get any defensive sacks against North Carolina. They had 3 against Furman, so we'll see how that pans out. But when I play this game out, I lean South Carolina for the game. But the offensive line mismatch to the Georgia front 7 concerns me. I think because of the sacks in the opener, I think South Carolina comes out with a conservative game plan. There's going to be short passes. They don't want Rattler to get rattled. I think they're going to try running the ball. Joyner hasn't been successful for him, their main running back, only 2.8 yards per carry. But I think South Carolina has to come out, be conservative, not fall behind the yardsticks, getting sacked early, so they run the ball, a lot of screens. I think Georgia wants to get the run game going to give their quarterback the ability to use play action. So when I break it down, the line for the game is 27.5. The total is 54. But the first half total is 28.5, and there's even a 29.5 out there. That's a huge percentage weighted towards the first half. Georgia slow start, South Carolina conservative. I'm going to go under the 28.5 or 29.5 for the first half in this game.
All right, love it, Ralph. Going with a first half play here on the College Football Kickoff Show. And just a side note, if you are new here to Wager Talk TV, and as far as the College Kickoff Show goes, why don't you go ahead, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. We have game previews on all the top 25 games, including a few others that you might not know had existed as well. So hit the subscribe button. Give us a thumbs up here as we continue to roll on with the previews. And we're going to take a look at a next one. And Drew, I love this one because You and I here in the South Florida area, I watched Ohio beat up on what I thought was a pretty decent Florida Atlantic team until I actually got to see them play. But now they're taking on Iowa State in a matchup. Curtis Rourke back for Ohio. How are you approaching this game here with Iowa State taking on Ohio?
Sure, Joe. Yeah, you speak about that one in Boca Raton. I watched pretty much every play of that game, lost some money on that game, but you know what? In this business, you can kind of learn from your mistakes and try to find more winners. So that's what I'm looking to do here in Ohio. Early kick, guys. Iowa State at Ohio, kind of a little intriguing, a little bit unique to see the Big 12 Power 5 team at a MAC team. We normally don't get that. And I have Ohio circled here, Joe, to look to bet on sidewise. They have won two straight since losing that week 0 game to San Diego State, and Curtis Rourke being back, which you talked about. But even more so, Joe, after breaking this one down, I like the under here. It's one that opened 44 and a half. We've seen a little bit tick down, some money coming in on the under. And I think it has to do with a lot of bettors out there earlier in the week, kind of seeing what I saw last week with Ohio up against the Florida Atlantic Owls, which that is a new offense. Remember, Todd Herman went down there and they were going very, very quickly offensive tempo. But Ohio's defense really held them at bay, played very good, which I think that they're going to have some success against Iowa State here. The Cyclones have had their issues. You probably heard about it in terms of the gambling, I guess we could call it scandal and whatnot. And for whatever reason, their offense has really been stumbling out the gate. They've actually only played in 2 games. One of them totaled 39 points, the other one 33 points. And go look at Ohio's 3 games since they played in week 0, 33, 37, and 27 point totals. That's not their own team. That's the full game that they've played in. So you can see why there's under money coming in. These two teams have combined to go 0 and 5 so far in the season to the under, yet to hit an over. I don't think we get there on Saturday, Joe. Seeing 43 available out there. I like Iowa State and Ohio under the total early on Saturday.
All right, good stuff there. Looking at the total, Iowa State and Ohio, as we welcome in Rob Vino, and Vino is going to take us, well, partly to Lucas Oil Stadium, sort of the Big Ten, kind of the Big Ten there, as Indiana is going to be hosting Louisville. And this is an intriguing one, Rob. I can't wait to hear what you have to say on this one, because I thought Indiana's defense held pretty well against what was supposed to be a top 5 Ohio State team. And Louisville, well, they have been winning. And it's been a little struggle, but they've been winning here. So what do you think? They're laying, what, 10 in this one, Rob? How are you approaching it?
Yeah, and you mentioned a couple of the angles I'll talk about here, Joe. And, basically here in this contest, in this situation, I'll buy into the Indiana defense thus far, and especially what they did against Ohio State. And I'll buy into the Tennessee transfer redshirt freshman quarterback who's now been named the starter, Taven Jackson. And I'll buy into it again versus this level of opponent. And at this price range, in the Ohio State game, Indiana's defense allowed only 23 points and 380 total yards. Most notably in that game, from a defensive standpoint, Indiana held Ohio State to 2 of 12 on third down conversions, something Louisville hasn't been great at so far through 2 games this season. And they also held them at 4 trips inside the 10-yard line. Ohio State, 2 field goals, 2 touchdowns. So the seemingly potent Ohio State offense, nationally elite Ohio State offense, was held to a minimal damage inside the 10-yard line. I guess it was Kyle McCord's first game at QB, but the talent surrounding him on that offense is at elite level inside college football. So I think we have to give credit to Tom Allen and Indiana for their defensive performance in that particular game. In that game, too, Taven Jackson split it. He didn't start the game. Brendan Sorsby started at quarterback, so it's Jackson's deal now. His dual threat ability probably comes into play here against Louisville. Let's look at another one of these angles, Joe. The Jeff Brom, Tom Allen angle. Obviously, Brom was at Purdue the last few years. These two teams played for the Old Oaken Bucket in, I think, 4 times. Last year, the last couple of years, Indiana struggled immensely with the Purdue offense. However, I don't know that there's any comparison between quarterback Aiden O'Connell at Purdue and Jack Plummer here at Louisville. Jack Plummer now in his third stop. Jack Plummer, by the way, when he was at Purdue, only threw one pass against Indiana. But, O'Connell, you might as well have had Jeff Brom on the field when he was directing the offense. So there's a distinct difference here between these two quarterbacks. I think maybe Indiana, from what they've shown so far this year defensively, can do a pretty good job against him in what is an explosive Louisville offense. Brom certainly has knowledge of Indiana, right? He knows what defense Tom Allen's going to run. However, it's a different team, different personnel that he has here, only in their third game. So maybe the slight advantage where coaching angle is concerned here and familiarity with each other goes slightly to Indiana in this case. If I take it all and add it up, Joe, a home crowd here for Indiana in the Lucas Oil Stadium where they'll fit plenty of fans. Tom Allen's defense facing Brom without an Aiden O'Connell at quarterback. Louisville barely wins by 5 at Georgia Tech. You got to believe plus 10 is a lot of points here. So even though Indiana doesn't have a lot of offensive firepower, I think they can stick within 10. I'll take the underdog.
All right, looking at Indiana to get it done here this weekend, and what should be a good matchup. Now, before we get to everybody's best bets, we got a couple of totals, maybe a side or two here we're going to take a look at in some of these big games coming up in week 3 of the college football season. But how about you? If you have any questions about any of the games they're talking about here, or any game for that matter on the card coming up in week 3, we ask, drop them in the comments section, as Ralph Michaels, Drew Martin, and Rob Vino, they will be monitoring the comment section all week long. So they're here to answer any questions you guys might have about these games. You want any of their thoughts regarding anything to do in this slate, go ahead, drop them in the comment section as we bring it back full circle to the pen. Mr. Ralph Michaels ready to go with a best bet number 1 here on the show. You're heading to the swamp of all places here, Ralph. What is going on as Florida taking on Tennessee in a big SEC matchup?
Joe, this is a spot I really like looking at, and I do this every year. I like the early conference games because lines and totals are so much based on what teams have done early, and there's just a different offense OCs and head coaches have when you're playing a non-conference foe than when you're playing a conference game on the road. Everyone remembers Tennessee's offense from last year, but Joe Milton is not that same type of quarterback. Yes, he's completed 67%, but that was at home against Virginia, the same Virginia team that just lost to James Madison at home, and against Austin Peay, where they put up 499 yards and 456 yards. Now, I will say this. Tennessee's defense, I think, is actually much more impressive than their offense. DC Tim Banks, his second season here after coming over from Penn State. That defense leads the nation in tackles per loss. They're tied with Nebraska for sacks on the season, 5.5 per game. Banks is doing a hell of a job. They've got 3 players on that D-line and linebacker that can absolutely rush against anyone. And then you have cornerback Hayden, who really is a shutdown quarterback, allowing them to do so much on the offside. So, yes, Tennessee played a neutral game against Virginia. It wasn't really a neutral game. The game was home of the Nashville, the NFL team. So, you had 90% of Tennessee fans. You look at Florida and everyone remembers, oh my God, they got crushed against Utah 24-11. Well, they really didn't get crushed. It was turnovers and special teams that led to their demise. They had a 346 to 270-yard edge, and they held Utah to 14 first downs. Last week against McNeese State, they held Florida to 112 yards. So I think going on the road for their first road start for Milton this season in a hostile environment. Let's remember, Tennessee did beat Florida last year, but Tennessee hasn't won in Florida since 2001. Florida is 16-2 the last 18 games. So while Tennessee might be a 6.5 or 7-point favorite, it's going to be a shock for them on these first road games early in the year. Under's the way I'm going to go. I'm going to split right now for the sense of the show. Half my best bet under first half half my best bet under for the full game, but I'm leaning under first half as an actual client release. I'll finalize that by tomorrow.
All right. Not a lot of faith in Mertz, huh? Yeah, nobody does there, Ralph. Kind of like the way you're looking at that one. Pretty sure Drew and I could probably throw for more yardage than he can. Hey, Drew, let's talk about this game you got coming up here as a best bet. And I love that you went with the Beavs here. Oregon State at home taking on San Diego State. So we got another classic, Mountain West taking on the, the Pac-12 or whatever the hell you want to call it now, because it's gone after this year anyway. But Oregon State has been nothing but impressive. What else can you say? San Diego State taking them on here. Do you give the dog a shot, or is the total the way you're looking at this one?
Well, Joe, I came down to the total, but I mean, does the dog have a shot? Sure, they have a shot. I just think this Oregon State team, they've been pretty good out the gate. And it's just something that kind of pops out at you. When you look at the odds screen, Wager Talk Live odds screen here, we get a sub 50 total with the favorite laying 24.5, 49 being the total and the spread is minus 24.5. That always gets a little bit tricky, right? Because the market is telling us there's not going to be a lot of points, yet you got to cover more than 3 touchdowns. That's what made it tough for me to get on the Beavers, particularly because I have San Diego State here, the Aztecs, as an under team, Joe. Their quarterback, Jalen Maiden, he's a guy that got, multiple scholarships in the SEC, Ohio State. He's a very good athlete. He's a guy that actually has played on the defensive side of the ball throughout his college career at points, but is the quarterback for San Diego State. You see him run around. He's pretty good. The problem is he can't really throw the deep ball very well, at least with much touch. And that has kind of made this offense for the Aztecs one-dimensional a bit, and defenses are really starting to stack up against the Aztecs and kind of break down their rushing game. So I don't think San Diego State's going to score all that much. I think they run a bunch of clock. And Oregon State, now their offense has been pretty good. They've been racking up some numbers here. So this is a little bit of a hold your nose, bet the under, because we could get our faces ripped off. But DJU, the transfer from Clemson, I'm not going to try to pronounce his last name, but he's a good athlete himself. But if you remember from his Clemson days, his touch on the deep ball, he still needs a little bit of work on that. So I'm not so sure that they're going to be able to rack up as many points, particularly because their first 2 games were UC Davis and San Jose State. I know San Jose State can score themselves, but defensively, 2 teams that are not as good on the defensive side of the football as San Diego State. He does have a 74% completion percentage, 5 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. But the fact remaining, I think the step up in athletic ability on the defensive side that Oregon State's going to face keeps this a lower scoring game, Joe. So give me the under 49, San Diego State, Oregon State.
All right, there you go. And under it is San Diego State, Oregon State for Drew Martin. And Ralph is holding up his pen. For those of you new to the show, that means he's got something to add here. What do you got for us here, Ralph? And he's muted. Okay. Well, unmute yourself, Ralph. That would be even. Don't hold up a pen if I can't hear you.
Come on. I can't go to the database and unmute myself. I'm not that smart, guys. Drew, Rob, and Joe, this surprised me, and I don't want anyone to think this is a negative towards Drew's play on the under, but I just went to the database, and when you looked at a line of 23 or higher with a total of 49 and lower, so sort of in the situation you were saying, just about half of what the total is. Since 2013, those games have actually gone 132 and 86, 60.6% to the over. That shocked me, Drew, because I had the same philosophy as you, but a total since 2014, when the line is minus 23 or higher and the total is under 50, those teams are 60.6% to the over. So again, nothing against Drew's play. I don't want you guys to think I was calling him out. It's just a situation I enjoy sharing with one of our great handicappers talking about it, what the actual numbers are.
Absolutely, Rob. I appreciate that, man. Oh, hey, we're all students. When you stop being a student, that's when you're probably going to lose a little money. So I appreciate the info.
That's got to be 60% of absolute blowouts, Drew. I'm thinking it's got to be all dominated by one side there. I just don't. I've got the confidence in San Diego State's defense not to have that happen to them there. So I do think the scoring is
Right.
going to be a little bit less than what we anticipate. But that's crazy, Rob. I would have never pegged anything like that at 60% or better. And Vino, speaking of scoring, I think Penn State just did. In fact, running the ball, mostly because Illinois sucks at stopping the run. So go ahead and tell me, how is Penn State going to dominate Illinois, or are they this weekend?
Well, let's hope they do, because my bank account would appreciate it if they do. I'm going to lay the 14.5 with Penn State here, Joe, maybe because it's early in the season still. And, 6, 7 weeks from now, things could change. But Illinois is just not the same team at this point in time. And maybe they still get looked at a little bit like last year's squad from a numbers perspective. But Penn State certainly doesn't get looked at as if they're Ohio State or Michigan quite yet. And if this game were Illinois at home against Michigan or Ohio State in this situation, I got a feeling the line would be 17, 17.5, maybe higher with those teams. So maybe we get a little value with Penn State still, not quite looked at as if they are as good as Ohio State and Michigan. My own opinion is they are at this point in time. Let's look at some of the numbers here, some of the things that'll go on the field. To me, Penn State at this point in time, they're loaded with elite level personnel on each side of the football. And Illinois looks to be in a rebuilding year under Brett Bielema. And the numbers are telling us that's the case right now. Illinois heading into the season. Now, these numbers always change, right? But we love to look at experience numbers, career starts on the OL coming back, how much offense is coming back. Here's how Illinois stacked up before they played a game this year. 99 in the nation as far as percentage of returning lettermen were concerned. 117 in the nation as far as offensive yards returning this year. Number 88 in the nation, percentage of tackles returning. And number 96 in the nation in career offensive line starts. All those numbers would lead you to believe that Illinois was going to have a down year. Illinois' defense, 477.5 yards per game allowed. I don't have to go through every single name, but at quarterback, Drew Aller, and the running back combination of Singleton and Allen, and then this wide receiving trio, they're too explosive for Illinois to contain, in my opinion. Don't have a real problem laying 14.5. I think the number's short. I think the talent gap is substantial on both sides. Going to play Penn State here, minus 14.5 over Illinois.
All right, laying it, Rob Vino is with Penn State. Now, the good news is, and we mentioned it earlier, if it's college football previews and best bets you like, it's exactly what we have for you here at Wager Talk TV. So all you have to do is just hit that video on your screen right now, and you will get to see a whole bunch of top 25 game previews coming up here in week 3 of the college football season. Best of luck. Come back and join us again tomorrow for another edition of the College Football Kickoff Show. We'll see you then.